Okay, we are going to pick up from Daf Chav Hey Amud Beis where we left off last week. We'll try to get to Daf Lamed Beis, Amud Beis, yesterday's Daf. Sok the Mishnah Chav Hey Amud Beis Marchikin es ha'ilon min abar esrim v'chamesh ama. A person must make sure he cannot put a tree within 25 amas near a pit because the Chav Hey Amud Beis, the Mishnah, the bottom towards the bottom of the Daf. A person cannot put a tree near a bar because the root system is going to affect the bar. B'char v'shikma, which is a carob tree, and a sycamore tree, which has much more extensive roots, then you need to do chamisha mama. Bein melamalo, bein minatzad, it doesn't make a difference if the bar or the tree is in a higher elevation or they're an equal elevation. In a bar kadma, if the bar is first kaitzitz, you must remove the tree. However, b'nais and damim, you still have to pay for the removal of the tree. Why? Since you planted it with Rishon Zok Rashi, Adzman Gadol, the only hezek is only going to happen with this man Gadol, therefore Chachamim weren't mechayiv you to cut it without payment. Them Elon Kadem, however, if the tree came first, lo yikaitz, therefore you do not need to cut off the tree. Safik zak kaidem, v'safik zak kaidem. What happens if you have a safik again, lo yikaitz? Hamaitz mechaver, all over, in order for me to move, I don't have to move the tree. Rabbi Yaisi Aimer Afa Bisha Bar Kaidemis La Elon. Lo yikaitz, even if the bar came first, you still do not have to cut it. Why? Shezeh chayfe b'teich shaloi v'zeh noiteya b'teich shaloi. Rabbi Yaisi holds ala nizuk laharchik es atzma. This is the famous sheet of Rabbi Yaisi, the Mishnah Chav Hey Amud Beis. Zok the Gemara Tana bein sha'bar lemata v'ilan lemalo. Bein sha'bar lemalo v'ilan lemata. We have a price that says it doesn't make a difference if the tree is on a higher ground or if the bar is on a higher ground. Fret the Gemara as follows. Bishla, we can understand in a scenario where bar lemata v'ila lemalo, where the trees are on top and the trees are going, the root system is underground, and it's going to affect the bar that's underneath. So ka'azolin sharoshin maskila bar comes the roots and it's going to destroy eventually the bar. Ela bar lemalo v'ila lemata amai. How do you understand when the pit's in a higher elevation than the tree? Why should you have to remove the tree? The reason is they travel through the ground, and therefore malkin karyer bar, and it's going eventually to destroy the entire bar, the walls and the ground. Eventually, everything is going to get destroyed. Rabbi Yaisi Aimer says in the Mishnah, Ava Bisha Bar Kademis Leilon Lo Yikaitz. Why? Shezeh Chayve B'Teich Shalai. This one digs in his pith, and this one plants. Amr Yehuda Mishmuel Allah is like who? Rabbi Yaisi. Meaning they would say, Moidi Rabbi Yaisi Begiri Didei, with his arrows, and Rashi gives a case. He talks about where you're in two-story house, the person on the top story has his plaster got a little ruined, and now there's a little hole in the ground. So Zok Rashi, if you spill the water directly on top of the hole, and it goes into the person downstairs, that's considered gear delay, because it's his arrows. Mashenkin, if you pour it somewhere else, and it trickles, and eventually gets towards the hole of the plaster, then goes down, that's not considered giri day. Papi Yaina Ani Vashava, that was his name, the name of his place. He made money very quick. He was always poor and suddenly became rich. COVID money. Bana Pandi built himself a massive palace. Havana Chatsuri B'Shavusei, there was these people that used to press sesame to make sesame oil. The Chavadaiki Shumshimi Havanaida Pande. Whenever they would press on this machine in order to make sesame oil, the whole entire house would shake. So Asik made their vashi, and they started complaining. Since over here, as soon as they're pressing it, it's causing a vibration. It's considered gir delay. So frek the Gemara v'kama, how much does it need in order to be considered that the house is vibrating from them? For the Gemara, kedenaye nachtama puma the chatzva, we're on Daf Chaf Vav Amud Aleph, top of the Amud. It's when a lid is on top of lid of a barrel is on top of the wall. When they're doing it, it shakes. Such a maisa is considered a ra'ada from them, and they would talk after move it because of gear delay. The Beiba Meryoin Barei de Ravin. It's a family, Beiba Meryoin, the son of Ravin, have a Napzi Kisna. Whenever they would beat the flax, have a Ozel Riksa. The Riksa is the chaff from the flax. What would happen? Umaski Inchi. And it would hurt people, it would damage people. Osik made their Avina, they went in front of Avina. Amalu Kamrina, my dear Rabbi Yaisi, Begir delay. When is Rabbi Yaisi hold? You have a problem, Gir delay, Hani Milita Ka Ozla Mekaichai. That's when it's coming from their kaichais. Hacha ziku de kamantila. There it's the ruach that's causing the shaft. Therefore, they don't have a problem. That was Shitas, That was the halacha of Ravina. Maskil Omar Bar Ashi, Ma'ishno, we all know Hilchos Shabbos. Mizoyre v'ruach misayase. When a person does the winnowing, he picks up the shovel and it goes. And that's the halacha of Zoyre. So over there, Yechai, what's the difference? So Amrua Kameda Marmema, they Taka said this question in front of him. And he Taka held that even though there's a ruach, it's still considered coming from him. The halach is if someone he takes a hammer and he's slamming again into the sparks and it goes very far and it's mazik, he's chayav l'shalim. So Rashi explains, we can understand Ravina with Zoyre v'ruach mesayasai because over there it's more understandable because of meleches machshavas asur Torah. That's the chiluk maybe. But why is it different from gates ayoytze tachas apatish? For the Gemara, hasam nichalei delezel. Hacha loy nichalei delezel. Regarding the scenario over here where we're talking about the chaff, he doesn't care. So since he doesn't care, it's not his ruach doing it. He's not doing any conscious effort and putting on a strength in order to knock down the shaft. Therefore, he's part of Masha'enkim. At the gates of Yaitse, he doesn't want to ruin his house. He does it extremely strong, and therefore, when it goes in Beis Mazik, you are chayiv. Zok the Mishnah Chavav Amad Aleph. Lo yita Adam Elon Samach Lesadeh Chaveroi Ela Imken Herchok Mimenu Arba Amos. A person's not allowed to plant a tree near the person's field unless he moves Dalat Amos. Zok Rashi, whether it's a Sada Alav and a grain field, but Sada Elon. And the reason is Kadei Avodah Karem. So there should be room to do the Avodah for this Karem. Therefore, you need Dalat Amos, in order that the plow doesn't go into your neighbor's rishos. That's what it means, Kadei Avodah Karem. Echad Kfanim, whether it's Kfanim, whether it's vines, Vechad Kol Ilan. However, Hayagadir Ben Tayim, if there was a fence in between and the Bach sticks in, and we're talking about the underground was rock, Zeh Soymich Legadim Ikan, then it's not a problem. That's not a problem to put the machresha all the way up until the fence. And the reason is because the reason is there's no problem that the machresha is going to go in. What happens if the roots are in the field of his friend? The halach is he's able to destroy those roots and cut them off in order that the plow shouldn't get ruined, because the plow is a sharp blade that went gimel tvachim into the ground. However, if he's digging a pit or a siach, a mara, a vault, or a ditch, kaitzitz, he's able to cut as much as he needs. And the roots, we're going to see who it belongs to. It says shaloi. The Gemara is going to question, does it belong to the Baal Elon or it belongs to the Baal Hasadah? Zok the Gemara. Tana, Arba Amish Amru is Kadei Avodas Karem. The Dad Amish we said is in order that the plow should have room and not go into his neighbor's Sadeh. Amashmol loy shana leBeretz Yisrael. Dafka in Eretz Yisrael. Ava beBavel was good enough shtei amas, and Rashi's mash, but there the plows were much smaller. Therefore, it was only in need of 2 amas. Tani nami achi that in Eretz Yisrael was daled and Bavel was 2. It says leita adam Elon samach lesadach aveiroi lemken hechuk mena shtei amas. How could that be? Well, not tanan. Our Mishnah says arba amas. Elalav could the shmuel that there's a chilik. Bavel and Eretz Yisrael, whether 2 amas or 4 amas, shma mina. Mika the Rambam Mir Masamed asks a lashon of a kasha. Tanan loyita adam Elon samach lesadach aveiroi. Unless you're a marker, Dal Amas. Tanya Shtei Amas. We have a brisa that says 2 Amas. I'm sure like Kasha. Kam beVavel where it's 2 Amas. Kam beRetzral that you need Dav to go Dal Amas. Zok the Gemara as follows: Rava by Rav Chanon Havile Hanu Dikli Amitra the Pardesa of Rav Yosef. He had these column trees, these palm trees that was going on the boundary of Rav Yosef. Hava Asi Tzipayri. There was these birds that would go, and Yasvi Bedikli they would go onto these palm trees. V'nachti, afterwards they would land into the Pardesum, Mafsidile, and it would ruin it. So Amalei Zilkaitz, he told him, please go cut your palm trees, because they're coming to destroy my Pardes. Amalei Ba'achikali, I already did my Dal Amas, what do you want from me? Amalei Hanimi Li Lanois, that's when you have in trees, since it's Kfanim being a Tvei, and you have to move more than Dal Amas. Well, not Echad Kfanim, Echad Kol Ilan, that it doesn't make a difference in the Mishnah. Amalei Hanimi Li, when doesn't it make a difference? Hanimi Li Ilan Vikfanim, Ilan Li Ilan Vikfanim Likfanim. When they're both equal ground, Ilan Likfanim. However, if it's a tree to the vines, being a Tvei, you need more than Dal Amas. Amalei, he told them, I'm not like a Kaitzna, I'm not willing to cut it. Why? Damarav. Why is he afraid to cut it? Damarav. Hi, dikla detain kava. If you have this dekel, that as long as it can produce a kava fruit, also to mix it. It's also to cut it because there's a lachi. Now let it cut a fruit tree. Rav Scheiner says, "L'shachiv shichas beri." My son Shichas, that was his name. he died, the reason why he died, he cut a fig tree before its time. If you are comfortable that the halacha is you need more than Da'at Amas, I'm not willing to take that risk, therefore I'm not going to cut it. Rav Papa, Havale Hanu Dikli, Amitzvah Rav Huna B'Dei Rishua. He had these Tekalim going again on this border of Rav Huna B'Dei Rishua was going into his Meitzer. Azul Ashkechei, Rav Papa went and he saw the Have Chafar, V'Kakoy Charashov, and Rav Huna was going and cutting off the roots. Amalei Mahai, what's going on? So he answered back, Amalei Tanan, we have a Mishnah. Hayu Sharashim, V'Yotzim Techsadu Shechaver, the Allah is Mamik Shleisha Kadesh Shaleyakim V'Machresha. So what do you want from me? It's totally mutter. So Amalei, Rav Papa told Rav Huna, Hani Mili Shleisha. However, you are Papa Kachafar Tvei, you are digging, you're going more than Gimel Tvachim. I am digging for the pits, the ditches, and the vaults, that it's not in Chayva Bar Sichem Ara, the halacha is Kaitzitz V'Yayir V'Eitzim Shaloi. And therefore he's able to cut, what? How deep he wants, correct. That's the halacha by a bar. He doesn't have to go till Gimel Tvachim, he can do much more. Amar Papa said, Amalei Mekula, I tried giving all these rayos to La'eser to stop him, I couldn't prevent him. Ad the Amri Le, until I told him how the Rabbi Yehuda, what the Rabbi Yehuda said, we saw this earlier on Yud Beis, that Meitzer Shechzika by Rabbim, also Lekalkulai, right? In those days it was very common that a Meitzer, and therefore since he already was Machzik Zot Rashi within, on the Sharashim he had a Chazaka. So the Basra did Nafak, therefore he was able to stop him from taking off all his roots. The Basra did Nafak, after he left Amar, after Papa left, Amar Avuna told himself, why didn't I tell him? Depends. That we know, we're going to see this in the whole daf of Ula, and that the main nourishment of the tree is only 16 amos. If so, this tree that we're talking about that he was digging was after 16 amos, so there's no such a thing as getting a chazaka after 16 amos since there's no kaiches from the tree. Haya chayfer bar siach umara, the halach is kaitzitz v'yayred v'eitzim shalai one chavav and beis the top of the amid. Boy mini Yaakov adiyavam Rav Chizda. He declared with him, Eitzim Shami. The Mishnah says, Eitzim Shalai. Who does it belong to? Amalei Tenusa Tabraisa Sharshe Elon Shel Hedyet Habayim Shel Hekdesh. In those days it was very normal to be Magdash your Sada to give it to the Beis Mikdash. So what happened was you have a tree in one side it belongs to Hedyet and the next Chatzar belongs to Hekdesh. However, so the Sharashim of this tree belongs to Hedyet and is going into a Chatzar of a Hekdesh. Habayim Shel Hekdesh. The halach is Loi Nehenin. Veloy malin, Rashi throws in, you're not nenim in the Rabbanon. Veloy malin, if you had a no, you're not mal. So you clearly see that what? The roots of the tree is going into the other person's chatzir. Still, the halacha is, you're not mal. So the tree, who does it belong to? Is in the hedyet. Mishum achilay malin, because we go basa the tree, which is in the side of the helet. And if you go basa where the roots are currently, my loy malin. Elamai, Basra Elon is leaning the we have a rye that eats him when we're clearing the Shiloh. Who does these roots belong to? The answer is it belongs to the Baal Elon. Frektamar, Ema Sefer. The problem is the Sefer says, Shel Hegdesh, Haboim B'Shel Hedyet, Loi Nehenin, Veloy Ma'alin. Someone has Hegdesh the other way around, where you have a Hegdesh tree going into a Chutz of a Hedyet. The halacha is the same halacha. V'ya Basra Elon is leaning, you tell me go Basra the tree. Amai Loi Ma'alin. Elamai. You don't have a right from the ratio Sefer. Everything more on this kasha. Me there, we're not talking about this. We're talking about begidulin, haboin, la'achim, kanaskina, v'kasavar. We're going like the man Omar in Mesechtes Meila that holds ein Meila begidulin. We're not going to learn too much about Meila, but the basic concept is that it was the person himself wasn't makdash it. It was only went on its own. Therefore, it won't have a din hektish. Ravina Amar loy kasha. Ravina says it's not a kasha. Kan b'toich sheshes rama. Kan chutz l'shesh rama. The Reish is talking about the first 16 amas. However, the Seifa is talking about chutz l'shesh rama. That what? That in that nekuda we're going to explain that since there's no unique or there's no nourishment coming from that tree, therefore it is mutter. Okay, that's why you're not moiling, because it's after 16 amas. Amar Ula says, Elon hasamuch lameitzar betoich sheisres rei amog gazlanu. What happens? You have a tree. Now we're going to go into numbers on Daf Chav Zayin. Again, these numbers are not so complex, especially anybody that did it by Arichas Rav when we learned the Daf and the Daf Yomi. We're going to go through the sugyos of Ula of 16 amas. That nourishment is dafka from 16 amas and not more than that. Amula, Elon asamuch lameitzar. Betoich sheisher amma gazlanu ve'ein mevin mimani bikurim. You don't have to bring bikurim. And Rashi says why? Because it says asher tavi martzecha. It has to be your land. And therefore, when you're gazlan, you don't have a din of martzecha and you don't bring bikurim. Frak the Gemara, minale le'ula. Where does Ula know this halacha of 16 amas? So let's go through it. Ilay mimidetnan, like we find in Masechta Shvius, beginning of the Masechta, it says, Esen etiyos amufuzarois betoich beisa, charshin kol beisa b'shvilan ad Rosh Hashanah. So let's give a little context to what's going on over here. There's a halacha that a person the year before Shemitah, he's not allowed to prep his land. The only time you're allowed to touch the karka is if you're doing it for the netiyas. So the halacha is that halacha l'maisha mesinai, they bring down in Rashi that if you have these 10 trees in a Beis Saw, we're going to see exactly the measurement of Beis Saw. We're going to see that it's 2,500 square amas. We're going to say that everyone's getting the nourishment, and therefore the halacha is you're able to plant until mamish at Rosh Hashanah. So let's go through it. Midetanan, Esenetius, you have these 2 saplings, and with Vuzara, they're spread out, Betoich Beis Saw, which is a Beis Saw is 2,500 square amas. Charshin kol Beis Saw, b'shvilan ad Rosh Hashanah. You're able to do it until Rosh Hashanah. Elamai, you see that it's getting its nourishment. Kama havalu, how much is a Beis Saw? Trey alfin, v'chamesh me'al garmidi. It's 2,500 square amas. The kol chav echad kami matule. You're doing 2,500 divided into 10 is how much? Masin v'chamshin. It's 250. So again, haloyahave de the ula. It's not like ula. So what is ula? Ula's halacha is it's 16 amas by 16 amas. 16 each direction is 32 amas. 32 times 32 is 1,024 square amas. So Ula's halacha is going to say 1,024. Here this Mishnah clearly says 10 trees of 2,500. So you're down to 250 square amas. So Frak the Gemara has nothing to do with Ula. Ula is 1,024. This Mishnah is only 250. The Ella Midetanan, we're going to try to bring a different Mishnah that says as follows. Shloisha Ilanois Shel Gimel Bnei Adam. You have 3 trees that belong to 3 separate people. And again, we're going to give a little more context. The halacha is as follows. A Sadeh Elon has until Shavuos to be Noite. A Sadeh, regular Sadeh Halavan, the halacha is it has until Pesach. So if you have these 3 trees, if it's spread out and they all get equal nourishment, then we're able to use it up until Shavuos, like a Sadeh Elon. However, if it wouldn't have this equal nourishment, Rashi brings down, you would only get Kimloi Oyerloi Vesala, which is right around the tree, and the rest would have a Lacha of a Sadeh Halavan. And therefore, you only get until Pesach. So now that we have the context behind this mission, let's go right through it. Shloisha Ilanois Shal Gimel Bnei Adam. You have 3 trees that belong to 3 separate people. Harelim mitzdarf, and the halach is it's mitzdarf those 3 trees. V'charshin kol beisa b'shvilan. Because of these 3 trees, they get an equal nourishment. That's what we're trying to say. Therefore, we're able to be chayrish like a regular Sadi Elan will have until Shavuos. So let's go through this measurements. Kama havaluhu, how much is a beisa? We know is trey, alfin, vehei, mea garmidi. It's 2,500 square amas. L'chol chad kama matile. How much is in each? We're doing 2,500 into 3 lanas, so it's 25 divided into 3 is how much? So the Gemara, tamni mea, v'talsim v'talsa v'talsa. Right, 25 divided by 3 is 800, 2,500. 25 divided by 3 is the same measurements. It's going to be 833 and a third. So frak the Gemara, akatin efishule le'ula. We're not helping anything because Ula holds what? 16 by 16. How much is 16 by 16, which is 32 times 32, is 1,024. Ula is 1,024. And here we're coming out the Cheshbon and the Mishnah is only 833 and a third. For the Gemara, loidak. Ula wasn't medayik so much. He in a Chanami was saying 1,024, and this is coming out 833 and a third. And in reality, it's not such a different in Amos, even though these numbers sound so much. In reality, it's only 14 and a half Amos, because 14 and a half times 2 is 29. 29 is going to end up being 833, but Ula is 16. That 14 and a half to the 16, that Am and a half is going to jump it from 833 and a third to 1,024. So the Gemara, Frek the Gemara, that's fine to say Leidak. Eimadam Rina Leidak is only the Chumrah. Here, Wahandi Bikurim. Ula's halacha is that up to 16 amas, Ein Mevim Mimedi Bikurim. However, the Kula Leidak Mi Amrina, and we can't say the halacha is going the Kula. Here, Ula is going to be saying a less of a measurement up to 1,024 amas is parted from Bikurim. Really, it should be only 833. Fam for the Gemara, Bon Teretz. Mi Savras Birivua Kamrinon. It's not an exact square that's growing the plants, rather, Bi'igula Ka'amrina. Rather, the way we look at it is we have a square of 16 by 16, but we take a circle. And what's going to change with the measurement of a circle? Zok the Gemara. What's the difference when you take the measurement of a circle to a square? Fam for the Gemara reveal. So how much are we left with if you have a quarter? 1,024 divided into 4 chalakim, if you pull out the calculator, it's 256. 1,024 minus 256 is 768. So it comes out that Ula's halacha of 768 is taka lekula, because really you should have up to 833 and a third. So let's see it inside. Kam Meruba Yaisel Eagle reveal. Pashlahu Zayin Meya Vishatim Itamya. You're left with 768. Now, Frek the Gemara, Akati, Pashle, Palga, Da'am. So you're still left with an extra am. And we're going to explain it. However, the Rashi does bring a mahalach that some say it's really 16 and 2/3 based on the Cheshbon Yigula, but we're going to work, Rashi, to make it easier, we're going to work with the Cheshbon Revia. So let's try to break it down, this Rashi. We're left to, we just explained, that is 833 and a third. Ula's Cheshbon is 768, because he's doing 1,024, 3/4 of that. How much is 833 minus 768? If you pull out the calculator, 65. 65 amas of square amas. We take the 65 amas, we split it into 2, because we're going to put half amas around the boundary. 65 times 2 is 130. You're left with 130 amas. What do you do with this 130? You're going to do as follows. You're going to put half amas on top, which is 32 amas, each direction, top and bottom. That's 64. You're left with 130 minus 64. You're left with 66. What are you going to do with those 66 amas? You're going to put it again into the side, so it's 33 by 32. And our cheshbon is 32 by 32. That's the kasha that it comes out an extra am. If you break it down, it's not so scary, these numbers. From 1 amma, correct. It ends up being 33 by 32 up this cheshbon of dividing up the square amas. That's the Gemara's kasha. And that the Gemara says, Hainu de loidak, in a chanami, v'lechumra loidak. You're left with 32 by 33. 32 by 33 is an extra square amma overall, when you're going all around the cheshbon. You're right, Rashi does say that we're going with the gula. Yeah, we're going with the square. If we're going with the square, you're putting it all around the boundaries a little more than Ula's cheshbon of 16, which is 32. Here it's a little more, 33 by 32. What?
Changing from circle back to square?
No, Al Pi the cheshbon of circle, it's a little more complex, that it's not really extra amma. It's really, Ula's cheshbon would really end up being 16 and 2/3, and the attack could bring down such a gersav. Istagashi paslei, Trey tilsi the amsa. You're left with 2/3 of an amma, not a full amma, based on the cheshbon of doing a circle. But Rashi broke it down much easier with going the square amma. So mele fan for the gemara handed the duck with the chum duck. So let's try to bring a rayas of the 16 ammas. Tashma koine ilon vikakoy. So on buys Taka the schos, he buys the elon, he gets the kaka next to it. Maybe the kaira, he has to bring bikurim. And the gemara in the Hamina says, my love, kolshu. Even any kaka around it, not just 16 amas. Fan for the Gemara, loy. Yud, vav, amma, that's dafka we're talking about. When you have 16 amas, that's when you must bring bikurim. Let's try to bring another ayat. Tashma konish nei ilanis. So when it buys 2 trees, betech shechaver, maybe the ain't a kaira. Medayik, ha shleish. If you had 3 ilanis, maybe the kaira, you will bring bikurim. And my love, again in the Hamin, is also called shu. So it's a kasha and ula that says 16 amas. Fan for the Gemara. Loi, Hachinami, also we're talking about Yud, Vav, Amma. Talking about 16 Ammas. Toshma, let's try to bring another raya. Rebbe Kiva Oimer, Karka, Kolshu, Chayev, Bepeya. This is the kasha, underline it, Ubi Bikurim. It clearly says that what? Karka, Kolshu, Chayev, Bikurim. The Kais in Allah of Prozbol, the Sugi of Hillel, by Shemitah we write a Prozbol. The Niknin Ima, Nechasim, Shein Lam Achrayis. The Allah is, it can be kind with Nechasim that don't have Achrayis. But the basic kasha is, it clearly says that what? Karka, Kolshu, Chayev, Bikurim. There's no way out. And the Gemara, no, we're not talking about Ilonois, hacha b'mayeskinon b'chiti. And chiti, Rashi explains, all zayin mina mechai bikurim. And chitin can make sense that there's such a small amount is getting a nourishment. All you need is directly down is the ikar nourishment. Dikanam, it's also meduik like that. The tani kolshu. It's not realistic to say that a elon is going to get nourishment from a kolshu. Chiti we can understand. Taka shma mino, it's taka good raya. Tashma, elon miksase ba'aretz u miksase b'chutz la'aretz. You're on the border of Eretz Yisrael. You have a tree that's going, its trunk is very big. It's going in between Eretz Yisrael and chutz la'aretz. However, there's some roots are in Eretz Yisrael and some roots are in chutz la'aretz. The halach is, it's tevel v'chulin muravin zebezeh divri Rebbe. Rebbe says, it's one mishkababel, and therefore the whole entire tree is going to have a lacha of teva v'chuli. No, he says we can divide it. Hagadu b'chiv chayiv. If it's in the ones in Eretz Yisrael, then it's chayiv. It's chayiv all these halachas of Eretz Yisrael. Hagadu b'ptur. He's able to divide it. So Gemara understands now. I mean, akan loy pligel the marsav yesh breira, umarsav ein breira. Right? There's a big machlokes yesh breira ein breira, and that's when it's going to be totally on if you're able to make a breira to decide where these roots of the trees are coming from. Avo godol biptur. However, kulam, this is the raya, divrakol potter. So you clearly see that what? As long as it's godol biptur, you're potter, even though, what? Even though the tree is going into Eretz Yisrael, which has 16 amas, less than 16 amas, it's still potter. So it's a kasha and ula. How could you ula say that if the nourishment of the 16 trees, it's considered like the tree where it's growing from? You clearly see not. Even kulama would hold that if the tree's on the border, totally on the border, even though the roots are going into Eretz Yisrael, you're still part of everything. They're mafsik, some no. We're talking about there's rocks on the ground, therefore there's no roots going in between. For tomorrow, Ihachi, my time of the Rebbe. How do you understand Rebbe? If there's talking about there's rocks underneath, how do you understand the Rebbe wants to say that the whole halach is mixed up? There's rocks underneath. For the Gemara, the Hadi Arvi. What's happening on is very interesting. There's a tree. Goes towards the right, there's roots. Goes towards the left, there's also roots. But smack in the middle, there's a very big rock blocking the two from getting mixed up. Therefore, the Hadi Arvi, the trunk, it's mixed up in the trunk. You're right, there's separate roots on the bottom. However, since it's all, the nourishment's coming from the trunk, therefore, it's considered mixed up. So what's the machlokes? Rabbi's going to hold is the trunk, since it's going into the trunk, where both of the roots are hitting the trunk, and the trunk there's nourishment, so that makes it together. However, he's not going to argue if there's nourishment from the trunk, he's still able to say we're able to split the two and follow the roots underneath. Fraktigmar, you are saying Sheshis Rama Vesula, is that really true? Tanan, we have a Mishnah that says Marchikin is our Mishnah on Chafei Mabeit says Marchikin is Elam Nabar Chafei Amo. Clearly says 25 amas. How could Ula say 16 amas? Amabayo Mezal Tuvazli. Avada root system could go on up to 25 amas. However, Chushi Loi Mechashi Elaaches Rama only takes away nourishment, only absorbs and sucks energy only up to 16 amas. However, Tvei after 16 amas, Loi Mechashi doesn't make it a week. Katsav Di Mabar Boy Minerish Lakish Me Rabbi Yechanan Elon Hasamuch. Lemeitza betoich yud vav ama. Mau, what is the halacha? Amalei gazlanu ve'ein mevin mena bikurim. It's talking what we just learned. Okay, Asiravan Amram Yechanan echad Elon asamach lemeitza ve'echad Elon haynoite maybe v'koyret. Not like Ula. Why? Shaminas kain henchel yeshua Yisrael haaretz. Even though it's taken away nourishment, that was part of Ula, part of Yeshua. Zok the Mishnah of Zainam Beis Elon shu noite lesoich Elon shu noite lesade chavero. You have a tree that's getting into your friend's field. Kaitzitz meloy hamradea. You're able to cut up to it's called a goat stick, which is basically he had a stick behind the animal. He would use it to somewhat control the animal to see where he's going and everything. Up to there. Al gabe machresha up the meloy hamradea. Al gabe machresha on top of the plow. However, b'charv v'shikma, the carrot tree, the sycamore tree, can neged hamishkailis. What is a mishkailis? They call it a plumb line. It's basically a piece of lead. They use it as able to see exactly whose rishus is whose. So it's like a very thick, I would say more of a hook, a piece of lead, and it has a line that you're able to see. Today we use laser. We have way much more. It's a weight, right? It's a heavy weight. They still use it today?
They still use that, like a string with a weight.
Right, a string with the weight. I would understand today's technology is much more easier. Today we can use lasers to see everything. But you tell me we do use it. It's a heavy weight. You have seen it, I haven't seen it, but it's basically a use of a weight with a little line that goes through to be able to see the rishus, who belongs to who. So basically, in one word, airspace. That's right. That's what he's saying. Right. That's what they're using today. We have like those rulers. They're able to see it a little differently, and I would think today they use lasers. They're able to see if it's straight, but he's telling me not. I guess otherwise. But the point is, it's a plumb line. Whether they use it today or not is not relevant. But it basically means you get up to your airspace. It's only when the guy's saying, "I saw that you weren't there at night. That's why I wasn't meicher." In such a scenario, the person, the muksuk and the karka needs to go find Eidim, whether it's neighbors or whether it's a scenario of renters that he was there at night. Only when the person tainas. And that the Gemara says, Umaydi mazutra bereichlin hamachzim ba'yaretz, which you learned about the reichlin, they would go around through all the villages, they would sell cosmetics. The afagav delaytan taninale. Even though he doesn't open his mouth about night, we're going to be tiny for him, and they're going to have to bring Eidim that they were taka there, bein b'yayim ubein b'layla. Another nekuda is a Moed Rav Huna b'chanusa de mechuza. In a case of the stores in the mechusa, that what? Even though they weren't there at night, it's still a good chazaka. And the chiddush is that even though it's a storefront, which is a house, which is a structure that a lot of people will sleep there at night, he doesn't have to what? He doesn't have to sleep there at night. The Rav Huna is going to hold. It's not going to destroy his chazaka. However, Taisus clearly says, in the case of Chanus and the Mechuzah, he's going to have to bring a chazaka of 6 years. Meshenkin a sada, which has nothing to do with a night. It's a nafkemina. All he needs to bring is a chazaka of 3 years. So the chiddush of Mechuzah is, since it's avida b'layla, it's going to take him 6 years. And it's not going to share his chazaka. The Gemara is going to bring a ma'isa now. Rami bar Chama, Ukva bar Chama, they were brothers. Zovanei Amsa bahadi adadi. They brought this maidservant together. And they made a chap. They wanted to be that none of the brothers should have a full chazakah. So they decided to do is, each brother gets it every other year. Like that, no one's going to have a chazakah. So Mar ishtamish barishayna shlishit chamishis. One did 135. Umar, the other brother, ishtamish bashni revius v'shishis. What happened? They ended up getting into an issue. Nafak iri love it. The Ma'ira person came and started bringing issues and saying it would belong to him. He never sold it to him. Also, they made the Rava. They went in front of the Rava and they already had it for more than 3 years. Why didn't you guys do it every other year? In order like none of the brothers should have a chazaka. So if so, have a chazaka. La'ama nami loy have a chazaka, shouldn't be chazaka. However, v'loy amar and Rava's mind that this whole time is only not a chazaka al deloy cost of itra. Itra means the agreement. The operating agreement, what we do today in business, the operating agreement, there's already a call, and that call is good enough that it's going to create that these two brothers get a chazaka after 3 years. Avakatsa itra kala islay, and therefore you should have known better and you should have been meicha. Amar Rava, achla kula chutz mi beis raiva. And it's dafka beis raiva, nothing less, because beis raiva is a significant amount of a measurement that you could use up for something. So the halach is, if you add entire field chutz mi beis raiva, it's still kana kula. Chutz mi beis raiva. Rava says you don't get that beis raiva because you could have used it up for something. Amar Avuna ber Devashuva loya maran el basriyahi. It's only if you're able to plant it. La basriyahi kana la agavara. But Masko Biba Bayit, he has a problem with that. Lamata tzum neva mayikne. How could you ever buy a karka full of rocks? Elo, you know how you get a chazaka? But ukmi b'chiyusa mishatcha b'peiri. You let your animals rest over there, or you put your pears to dry out. Sachinami, you should have used up this raiva for what? This base raiva, ibayla ukmi b'chiyusa, or inami mishchatcha peiri. You should have put up your fruit. Now we're going to go on through maisas. These maisas are going to be from Chavtes and Beis all the way till Ahu Arva Lamadal and Beis, the next 5 plot. Every single time it says Zayim Shalav Vaisai, the Rishonim bring down that Avada Vavada, it's considered a maisa. So let's go through all these stories. We're going to try to get, Mitzvah Shem will pick up next week and we'll continue until the sugya of whoever Dav Mitzvah Betray. Very geshmak sugya over there in Lamadal. Okay, let's go through Chavtes. Chavtes and Beis man and Amen. Ahud Amalei Chavre, my boys by base. A person walks over to his friend and says, "What are you doing in my house?" "It's mine." "Amalei minach zavinta. I bought it from you. V'achal shnei chazaka, and I have a chazaka." "Amalei anah b'shchuna gavoy." I was in the rooms that was much more deeper, and every time I'd go through the hallways, and that's why I wasn't meicha. And therefore, you don't have a chazaka. So what did they do? Also, lekamei de Rav Nachman. Amalei zil barachilascha enechanami. You're going to need to bring a raya that he wasn't there in those inner rooms. Amalei Rav hachidina. Is that really true? Hamaitzim chaveiroi olav a raya. Right now, we're understanding, Rav is understanding, that is trying to say is that the muksuk is right now the lekech is the muksuk. He should have a mitzvah mechaber levraya because he's using a regular chazaka. Rav is understanding that he's trying to make a taina on the chazaka. But the chazaka was already established. Now the chazaka is already established, he becomes a muksuk, and he's trying to slug it up. Zozok the Gemara, Verami de Rava, Verami de Rav Nachman, after Rav Nachman. I'm going to bring a brayso. It's a stira, Bein Rav Nachman, Bein Rava. Why? Dahuda Amalei Lechavre, there was a person who tells his friend, Kol Nichse, all the Kol Elon Kinegdim Shkailas. However, by a soda where they use it for irrigation, there you get the whole entire airspace. Abba Shol Loimer, which is the Gemara is going to declare, is he going on the Beis Shalchan in the Seifa, or which is Machmer, is going to the Rishul Kula. Abba Shol Loimer, Kol Elon Srak. If it's a tree that does not produce fruit, then you need much more. It could go all the way entire airspace. Frektamar right away. Where's Abishol going on? Iboilu, Abishol Reishagoy. Is he going in the first case where Rabbanan are Machmir, right? They only hold that only Charv Shikma goes Kenegana Mishkailois. And Abishol is making, he says, even Elon Srak. Oh yeah, Sefer Koin is going to Chumrah. Tashma, right? If it's going to the Sefer, he's coming to say the Tanakama is going to hold Kal Elon's Kenegana Mishkailos and Dafka Elon Srak, so he's going to Chumrah. Tashma, let's bring it right. The Tani, we have a brayso that says, Beis Hashalchen Abisholaim Kal Elon Kenegana Mishkailos. Why? Mipnei Shatzel Rav LeBeis Hashalchen Shma Mino Reisha Koi. It's quite clear that he's going to the Reisha Shma Mino. Amavashim Asnisan Amidika Diktani. Why? It says Kal. Underline the word Kal. Why is he coming to say Kal? Elamai is coming to be the Kula. Elon Srak, Bishma Resha Koi, then we don't understand how Tony call Elon. Eli Yamrata Sefer Koi, if you tell me he's going on the Sefer, Elon Srak Mivaile, you're coming to be Machas, so tell me Dafka Elon Srak. Elah Shmamina, Resha Koi, Taka Tsarai, that's going on the Resha, Shmamina. Srak means it's a type of tree that does not produce any type of fruit. Elon, it's a barren tree. Elon, Shunaitil or Shusar Rabbim. The halacha is, you have a Elon that's going towards the Shusar Rabbim, right, and it's blocking people. It's impeding traffic. The halacha is kaitzis. You're able to cut it. How much? Kedei shiagomol oive veroichbay. Enough that a person those days, they all were on camels, and the person was traveling on top of it. So let's call it 10 feet. Up to 10 feet. And the Gemara is going to declare an animal that's full of land with twigs and vines and everything and flax. And we're going to declare how tall is that. We don't know. Is he going a higher measurement or is going a smaller measurement? Again, all against the airspace. Why? The Gemara is going to declare why it's not pashut. Zok the Gemara, Montana, who's the one who holds? The Basra, the Hashta is lean, we go Basra now. Why are we talking about the go Basra now? So Rashi's Masbri clearly says, you only cut it up to the Gummel. It's going to grow back in a week. What are we really solving? Maybe you should have to uproot everything. And that we see that we go based on today, take it a day by day basis. Zok the Gemara, Omer Shlakish, B'machlaike Shnuyin. Who is this? Verba Lezahi, the Tanan. We're going to learn this later. It says, Ein Nice in Chalal, a person is not allowed to make a big hole under the Shus HaRabim, Tachas Shus HaRabim. Bayres, Sichin Amayres, he's not allowed to do that. However, it's fine as long as what do you do? You have to make the cover of this hole so strong that what? A wagon full of rocks could able to go over it and it's not going to break. Now, it's very clear, over time, eventually this cover is going to get destroyed. It's just a matter of time, whether it's 20 years or 30 years, doesn't make a difference. It's a matter of time. So you clearly see that Rabbi Lezer says we care about today. So who are then about these branches? We're going to focus on today and you could cut it. Rabbi Yochanan Amar, no. Afilu Teim Rabbanan Hasan Zimnin Demafchis. It gets a little ruined over time, right? Like everything, all infrastructure. Velavadaite, no one realizes till usually tragedy happens. It's very common today how it works with infrastructure. Aval hacha kama kakaisle. But here by the branches, every time you see branches in the way, it's not a problem. You could keep on cutting it. Okay, Rabbi Yehuda Megamol Tal Pishton Chavilas Mirois, whether it has flax on it or whether it's full of twigs. That's the measurement. So, Frek the Gemara, Bailu, Shur the Rabbi Yehuda Nafish, Adil Shur the Rabbanan Nafish. Who's saying the higher? Who's the one who's going on a higher measurement? We know clearly the Rabbanan says that a person who's going Gumel and he's on top of him. Zok the Rabbi Yehuda, no, even a camel tall piston. So is he going less? Frank Zeruk the Mar Pshita the Shiura the Rabbanan Nafish. It's pashut that what the Rabbanan is saying a higher measurement. Why this Akadaitich Shiura the Rabbi Yehuda Nafish? If Rabbi Yehuda, let's go Rabbanan 10 feet. If Rabbi Yehuda holds 12 feet, how could that work? Rabbanan Shiura the Rabbi Yehuda Hechavdi. How are you gonna ever have a camel going full of twigs if it's more? Ve'alamai Shiura the Rabbanan Nafish. Frank the Mar, what's gonna happen? How's it gonna go the other direction? You tell me Rabbi Yehuda's the one who's less. Let's say Rabbi Yehuda holds 8 feet. That's what it comes out. That's what we're trying to say. Rabbi Yehuda's less. So if Rabbi Yehuda holds 8 feet, how's Rabbanan, who let's say it's a 10 feet, how are they going to get through the Rosh Hashanah? Rabbi Yehuda Bashur Rabbanan Mayavid. Fan for the Gemara, no, that makes sense. Because by Rabbanan we're talking about a person. After the Gachin V'chalav Tusa, he's able to bend. Mashenke, when you have produce, you have something on top of the animal, there's nowhere to move. Therefore, we must say that the Rabbanan's the one who's saying a higher measurement. They're going to say, let's say 10 feet, and Rabbi Yehuda is going to be 9 feet, and a person could duck at least, a foot to get underneath of the shiura of Rabbi Yehuda. All the trees have a plumb line. We called it plumb line all the way on top, the airspace, because of Tumah. Tana. Mipnei oil Tumah. The problem is because of oil. Oil Tumah, we already went through this. There's a problem, oil Tumah. Frektamar Pshita b'nei Tumah Tanana. Clearly says the problem is Tumah. Why would I think otherwise? Fan for the Gemara, im masnisin havamina. The problem is, Dilma Maisi Oirif, Tumah, B'shad Yasim. We're worried that a bird is going to go take a piece of Tumah and put it on the branches of the tree. And that's the problem. When someone, a kohen, is going underneath, that's going to be the problem. On that, Visagya, and therefore, how could you solve the problem of a bird taking a piece? If you thin out the branches enough that birds can't put anything on there, or birds can't even go up, that should be enough. Kamash Malon, the problem is oil tumman, therefore you must cut completely every single branch. Hajan Allah, Lo Yachver. We're going to jump into Cheskas Ha-Batim, where it talks about the sugyas of a Maitzim Chaver, all of Arayo, sugyas the Marakamo. Sugyas is going to be a very geshmak sugyas. It goes on quite extensively for the next many blatter. Doesn't say even one branch, it says thinning out the branches. The chulu ba'alma can mean thinning out the branches. Correct. It's we're talking about one off. Rather, that one branch is a shear the oil.
What is the shear of oil?
There probably is a measurement of a shear. And we're talking about that one branch has the shear. You're right. Maybe if it's a little of a twig, then there is no shear of oil in a chanami. But we're trying to find the nafkamina. The point is we're trying to find this nafkamina between an oil and a place where we're worried about the birds putting on the branches. Okay, let's continue. Let's jump right into that cheskas ha-batim. Cheskas ha-batim v'ha-boyrois v'ha-sichin v'ha-ma'orois v'ha-shevachis. Again, the shevach is again talking it's connected to the ground. V'merchotzos, a bathhouse, or whether it's a house, whether it's a pit, whether it's a ditch, whether it's a vault, all these stuff. V'merchotzos, which is a shvetz, a beis abadim, they pressed olive, beis shachat. V'ha-avodim, avodim is hukash l'karka, v'chol davar shu oisa peiros tader, anything that creates continuously every day, day in and day out, peiros. Cheskasan is how much? Shalosh, shanim, miyoim liyoim. We're talking about that if a person has in such a place for 3 years, what's the chiluk? What it means, chazaka? Chazaka means he doesn't need to pull out a shtar mechira. And if the marikama comes and says, what is going on in my field? As long as he says a taina and I lost my shtar, it's a great chazaka, and he becomes the new owner. Sada beis abal cheskasa shalosh shanim ve'enim miyoim liyoim. A sada that's relying on the rainwater, there doesn't have a full year of producing. So Rashi throws in umay cheskasa. So what is the chazaka? So Rabbi Shmuel Leimer Gimel Chadashim Berishayna, which means the last 3 months of the year. Gimel Bachrayna, the first 3 months of year number 3. Vishnema Sachaydish Be'emtza Harei Elu Yud Ches Chaydish. It comes out to 18 months. 3 plus 12 plus 3. Rabbi Akiva Leimer, we're going to see in Lamed Vav. We're not going to see Mitzvah Shem next week. We're going to go through Shitas Rabbi Akiva. What's the difference? Rabbi Akiva says Chaydish Berishayna, V'Chaydish Bachrayna. The last month of year 1, the first month of year 3, V'Yud Beis B'Chaydish Be'emtza Harei Yudal Chaydish. Rabbi Akiva holds 14. Rabbi Shmuel holds 18. Rabbi Shmuel, what am I talking about? Memad Dvarim Amurim Besad the Lavan. That's Taka Asad the Lavan. There, it comes out, it's in one parak, Rashi's masber, they all pull out. Therefore, you need Gimel Shanim. However, beside the Elon, Kones is Tvasi, you bring in your Yain, Zok Rashi, you bring in your wine. Umasak is Esav, you bring in your olive. Kones, it's Ketzai, and you bring in your fix to dry it up. The halacha is, Hare Elu Gimel Shanim, Lashon Rashi is Kehilu Ein Gimel Shanim, because of that it's not 3 years, but it has a halacha of 3 full entire years that it's good enough to establish a chazaka even without a shtar. Let's jump right into the Gemara. Amar Rabbi Yechanan, Shamati Mahoche Usha. Who is the Usha? We're going to see him in Beis. It's Rab Yechanan. Rabbi Shmuel, actually. We're going to see it. Rabbi Shmuel. And Avad, it's not really Rabbi Shmuel, rather it's the generations they heard it from Rabbi Shmuel. How do we know chazaka? Shehi Gimel Shanim. Zok the Gemara mi Shara Muad. Rabbi Shmuel said we learn it out from Shara Muad. That what? Ma Shara Muad kiven the Nagach Gisha Nagach Gimel Nagichos. Once a shar who has the status of a tam, but once he does an action 3 separate times, Nafik leaves the status of a tam, Becheskes tam, V'kam le Becheskes Muad. Shachenami kiven the Achla Tlashnin. After 3 years, 1 year after the next, of doing an action, Nafik la Rishus Meicher leaves the Rishus Meicher, V'kaim Allah, and it goes unto Rishus Lekech. Frekting Mar right away. Why are you comparing to Shar Muad? We all know when we all learn Baba Kama, no one holds. I can't say nobody, but everyone's going to say Ad Negich Revius Loi Mechayev. Hachinami, if so, Achon Revius Loi Kayama. Birishusei, Zoktig Mar, Enechanam, which should be over here, just like over there, you're not Chayev Chetzi Nezek only until the 4th year. So to over here until the end of the 4th year, at Gemar Shana Revius Zokt Rashi, it should not be a chazaka. How are you comparing the two? The second, the third negicha was done, it turns into more than one. Base. What do you want from the sharmur? The second it finished the third negicha, there is no 4th negicha. The 4th negicha has to happen. So how are you comparing to Asada to say the end of the 4th year? The end, the second it finishes the 3rd year. The day number 1 of year 4 is that's it. It's like an Negich Revius. And it should be into his Rishus. Ela me'ata frak the Gemara chazaka she'ein ima taina tahav chazaka. Well, Lama Tanan, we're going to see this in the sugyas later. Mem Aleph and Aleph. It says kol chazaka she'ein ima taina tahav kol chazaka she'ein ima taina eina chazaka. We're going to learn that if a person says, "Oh, I saw that you were fine with this. I went into your chutzner or your house for 3 years." Then avad, it's not a good enough chazak. We throw you out. You have to have a taina, except the yarish v'lekech. We're going to see that in the Mishnah over there. You have to have a taina to get the sada. So zaktig mara taima ma'ir minon kedem kedam hashta. Ir loy toin and non litinly. And the explanation is as follows. What is chazaka? Chazaka is just helping us that we don't know the truth. A person comes over and says, "You stole it from me." A person responds, I bought it from you, and I have had a shtar, but I lost it, so I have a chazaka. So since we don't know the truth, what is chazaka going to tell us? Chazaka is going to help to support his statement. So what is chazaka? Chazaka itself as a foundation is worthless. It only helps to support, it's a support statement to say whatever you're tining, maybe you're saying the truth. However, in a scenario where you're not tining anything, why should chazaka, avada, it's not going to help it to create a taina enough to take it out of someone else's ownership. Maskif law ravavira l'ma'ata macha sheloi b'fanav loy ta'av macha. We're going to learn that macha, even if it's not in front of the person, it's good enough to be a macha. Tell me the sharmud. However, it has to be similar to sharmud. That what? Ma sharmud b'fanav b'inon. Havachinami b'fanav b'inon. Just like we learned by sharmud, the only time where you can warn the person to become a tam is in front of him. Who I did over here by macha, you should have to be able to make it in front of him. For the Gemara, no. Hasam v'huad b'volov ksiv. There it says in the Torah clearly you have to warn him in front of the ownership. And Rashi's masber that what his edus is doing is causing him to be chayiv from chetzi nezek to nezek sholim. So avada, whenever there's a monetary value, we all know you have to face the person in order that he should be able to bring edim to be machashim. Mashenkan over here, all you're really doing is letting out a warning. You're letting out a protest that, hey, if you really tackle on the field, you must hold on to your star. Mashenkan over here, hacha Chavra islay, v'chavra de chavra islay, which means that friends talk to each other and words go out. When a person gets up and he says, I'm protesting that the Yankel's in that Rishos, eventually he's going to find out about it. We're going to see in Baba Kama where they talk about where a person, Sharamut, even if he does it in one day, in the morning he went and he was Nageach, then afternoon the Shar went and he was Nageach, Nachamol the third time, the halachis becomes a Sharamut, even one day. The Rabbanan have psukim, etmol, mitmol, sugis to Baba Kama that a taka takes 3 days. But according to our mayor that says you could do it in one day, if so, acho talsaperi, bechad yoimik going to chazaka. By figs, you could find in the morning it's not so ripe. So it came in the morning, I took out the figs. And then in the afternoon, it got more ripe, the other, I would say the other few trees. And like that, in one day, you could have a chazaka. Fam the Gemara, don't be the sharmud. It needs to be similar to sharmud. Ma sharmud be'inna de isle hanagicha, less hanagicha. Rameh is going to agree, to put it in one simple term, Rameh is going to agree if a sharmud walks in right now, 10:30 in the morning, into one room, and is negech 3 separate people, it's one unit. It's one negicha. Happens to be 3 separate people. Rameh's concept is that if he's negech in the morning in location A, and he's negech in the afternoon in location B and location A have nothing in common except showing that he's a person that's doing more and more ma'ase negicha. So too over here, which is trying to say by the figs, they're all there. You're right, it might not be ripe, but when you wake up on Sunday morning to do your harvest, all the peiros are avada sitting in front of there. It might be not totally ripe, but avada that's in front of us. It's like this. It's like bringing a concept of Rameir being a geach, 3 different people in one room. Fraktig Mara, okay, I got in a case where it's ripe, but where it's not so ripe, and you could see it. Achel plus a peri plus a yaimi. What happens when you eat 3 different pears in 3 different times? Going slav, it's like a caper bush. Lahave chazak. And Rashi says that the nakuda slav is, Lashon Rashi is, sheloi nicker boy hayoim. Today you can't even see it, it's such a tiny little dot. So then we're trying to push the agenda. Agenda is trying to explain where you can find 3 different times, 3 different units and make it a chazaka. So if so, in the case of tzlaf, where you can't see it, he'll be maida maybe where it's ripe, where it's there, but tzlaf, where it's not, it should be chazaka. Zok tomorrow. Hey chidami. Hasam peira isa. Hu migmo de kakama va'azil. Again, you're right, it's a tiny little dot, it's like nikka, but avada, it's there, and it's just growing very quick. Frak tomorrow, achatlas a peir bitlas and yami kaganas pasta, which is shachas, animal fodder. There, the whole nekuda is a very fast process, lahave chazaka. In 30 days. Basically did 10 times 3, so he made it a very short period. What did he do really? The kadach v'achla, the kadach v'achla. Hasam mishamet, hu the kashamet v'achel. Really, it's a 30-day process to get a normal, healthy animal fodder. He decided to cut the system, wait till it grows within 10 days, and take a little piece. All you really did was cutting little pieces of pieces. Avada, it's consider one growth of shachas a 30-day. All you're trying to do is trim it up. So the Gemara has continued to push the agenda. Achel tlasa peri tlasa yarchi. Kula am maidu shachas is only a 30-day period. So if so, what about a 90-day period? 3 times 30. In a case where it's from A to Z, taka kaganes pasta, which is shachas lahave chazaka. Fan for the Gemara, you're right. Man hoche usha. Who is hoche usha? It's Rabbi Yishmael. Rabbi Yishmael achinami. The Tanah we clearly see it in our Mishnah. What's our Mishnah say? Rabbi Yishmael madvar mu misada lavan. It's case we're talking about the yayin and the zaysim. It works. It comes out the maskana of chalchesim beis. According to Hochi Usha, you could have a chazaka in a scenario of a spasta in a 90-day period. It's no different than kanas a zaysav of a sada ilan. Now, frak the Gemara Rabbanan mai. It sounds like Rabbanan, however, is going to argue. Rabbanan hold you need to have 3 entire separate years. Zok we're going to try to bring from Yirmiyah. Little Nevi'us going on. Amar Rav Yosef Kruksiv. It's a pasuk. Says regarding Yirmiyah was the 10th year of Tzidkiyahu. They were about to go Gullus in 2 more years. What did he say? Sadais bekesef yiknu. The olam should buy fields with kesef. V'chasev b'sefer v'chasem. You should write a shtar and sign it. Now, very, very clearly, the shtar orders is a raya because it clearly says that you should buy it with money. So the kinyan was kesef. Sharei Navi Oimibes. So we're talking about the 10th year, and he's Mazelach Al Achatzre. He's warning about the future years. So Zokt Rashi, the last lashon of Rashi is Alma bahani tartishnein loy have chazaka. From the last 2 years that he's warned them, it's not a good chazaka. So all the Rishonim ask, we're trying to bring a chazaka 3 years. We're not trying to see 2 years. So two terutzim I saw. One teretz is that he only woke up on the 10th year. The Navi woke up in the 10th year. Mashma, he wasn't worried in the 9th year. And the reason why he wasn't worried is because you have the 9th, 10th, and 11th year will make it 3 years to have a chazaka, and therefore that's taka what he's trying to say. Okay. That was one teretz I saw. Maybe in a chanami, all he's trying to do is give an eitzah taiva. He's telling them they should have a star. Like that, you're not going to have Eidim when they come, starting to Kashiyayra love Zakt Rashi when they start to protest. If you're not going to say this, it says 10 years earlier. So it has nothing to do with chazakas. What did the Navi over there say? Banu, Batim, you should build a house, Vishavun, you should live there, and Natun, you should plant Ginais, Va'achlu, his parent, you should eat the fruit. Now, this has nothing to do with chazakas. It's talking about many years before. So, my comment, what is he saying? Elamai, he's giving Eitzah Taiva, Eitzah Taiva Kamash Malon, Achanami, Eitzah Taiva Kamash Malon. In Achanami, it's not a right to Rabbanon, because the Pasuk Yirmi could just be Eitzah Taiva, and Teida, that's Eitzah Taiva, the Chsev, like we already saw in the first parak. Yirmiyah's cipher, his name was Baruch. We saw that in Psukim there. Yirmiyah told Baruch, so you take the star, and what should you do with it? You should put it into earthenware. Why? Because it lasts for many years. Man Yam the Yami Rabim, and this is very clearly nothing to argue about. All it is bringing it as an Eitzah Taifa. So we're back to square one. We don't have a concept why Rabbanon hold 3 years. Elah Merava. You know why Chazak is 3 years according to Shitas Rabbanon? Shata kamaisa mochalinish tarti machal. For the first 2 years, a person is willing to let go of the yenims in his karki. He says, you know what, I'm fine with that. But tarti, at the 3 years, there's no normal person. Loi machal, a person's not willing to forgive, and therefore becomes a chazaka tzara, you have it. Amalei abayer, you tell me it's mechila. Elame'ata ki hadra ara, when you return the karka. In a case where you're no taina, comes a year later, you give the karka. Tahad de labari peri. Then the Paris, you are Michael. Alama, we have him, we clearly says, Amr Nachman. Nachman says, later we're going to see Lamed Gimel Beis, Hadra Arav, Hadra Peri. You have to return the Paris. Fraktimor, you Rabbi, you telling me it's a Mechila. If it's a Mechila, why in the world do I have to return the Paris? Ela Amr Rava, it's not about Mechila. Shata Kamaisa loy kapit. A person's not makbid, avadi's not Michael, tarti loy kapit, but tlas kapit. And therefore you have to get back to Paris because it's not a Mechila. You're telling me it's about a Kveda. Kegoin Hani de Bei Baral Yashiv. Who is this family, Bei Baral Yashiv? They were very, very strong people, and the second you touched their property, even for 1 day, they all came out and attacked you. They kapti afilo aman the cholaf mitzvah they do. Even so, in the second they jumped in the boundary, they would quickly pounce and start screaming and making a big deal about it. If so, what's the problem? In Kain Asata Derech L'Shiurim, and we all know that we don't give Shiurim for an all Takanas D'Rabbanan we find. The Beksuba 25 years, all these scenarios in Ksubas we find such a concept that Shiurim are dafka by Mikvah Memsa, everything has a shear. We don't go higher, we don't go lower. And if you're going to tell me Tzedek Pada, how can you make a very specific set amount of shear? It's really, the Gemara is trying to push that it's really dependent on a personality. Every person can have a little different measurements. Elama Rava, Shata Kamaisa, for first 2 years, Mizdar, Inish Mishdar, person watches over a star. Tarti Vitlas Mizdar, the 1, 2, 3, however, Tzvei Loi Mizdar. After 3 years, a person is not mizar, and we learned this back then when we did the Daf Yomi very bekitzer. We saw the main two pshat. We had the Ksais Chaishin that learns it's a takana derabbanan that a person eventually you have to make a takana that a person is going to hold on to shtar and eventually it's going to get lost. So we make a takana that after 3 years it's more than enough time that you should have had enough time to protest. The Ramban, that's the Ksais Chayshin and Kuf Mem. However, the Ramban, we're going to see this Ramban really in Mem Aleph, he explains it's more of a taina of Achvi Shtarcha. That really you have a back and forth. One person's tining, I bought the field, but I lost it. So that's a reisa. Well, why did you lose the shtar? The other person's tying in, it was my field, but I wasn't Meicha. So each one has something against him. So Zok Ramban, after 3 years, we could say Achvi Shtarcha, that he lost the shtar, and therefore we're going to use the taina of the taina that he was there for 3 years, stronger, not such a reisa. Once he doesn't have the reisa, he has a taina. And then the Rashba also gives a very similar mahalach of the Ramban, but Ayin Sham and all the Rishonim, a very big sugya. So that's basically the two shitas that hold. What shot after 3 years, it's a chazaka, whether it's a takano, whether it's a taina of Achvi Shtarcha. Amala Abayo. Why? Why shouldn't it be a machal? The Amalei Machis Bampai Avim Mizdar B'Shtar in some Scheiner learn in a Chanami. We already learned on Chav Chesam Beis the sugya of Chaver Isli. We know that concept. So what's the Mars Kasha? Taina is, if you really had the guts to say it was my field, you would have came over in front of me and let me know that it's your field. Then when I understood that you're giving the Macha, behind the scenes I didn't take you seriously. Because if you had the guts, you would have came over to me. The Mars says no. The Amalei Chaver Islech v'Chaver the Chaver Lesla, which doesn't mean to tell me the new concept of a friend talks to each other, because that we already learned of Chachesam and Beis. Rather, we're understanding in a much deeper level that his taina back is, by me not going in front of you is the same strength, because the word spreads so quickly that it takes guts to be meiche even shaloi b'fanav, and there's no difference. That's how we're understanding the Gemara when we did the Daf Yomi. We learned it with that pshat that Avada we know Chaver Islech. Amar Rav Huna. Shalosh shanim shamu sha'achlan ritzufas. Rav Huna says the 3 years that you were in the Sada was ritzufas. Makamash Montanina, we have a Mishnah Brisa clearly says Cheskashin shalosh shanim yom liyaim. And we already know 3 days. What does Rav Huna be mechadish? Fan for the Gemara, Mao de Tema miyam liyaim lafuke miktais. Maybe not every partial year. It's not used in the field 365 days specifically. However, if you want to use the field, we're going to see in a moment about Bagi where they use fields. Let's say he said 1, 3, 4, 5. He jumped years, he skipped years, Kamash Malon, Zok Rav Huna, you need to use the years one after the next. Amr Rav Chama, Maidi Rav Huna's Maidi, Ba'asra and Ba'asri the Maivri Bagi. In a place where it was common sense, that again, we explained that when we did the daf, that a lot of people, what they did is they slowed down the field. They did 1 year, and then they calmed it down in order to regain its energy, Kaviyachal and Tushrin, and then year 3 went back. So it was every other year, it was a business model that made much more sense for them. That's how they did it. Pshita. If that's the minhag, why is it not a chazaka? It's a place, some people keep the sawdust fallow, some people don't. So v'hai gavra mayvruhu. You would have said, you're trying to build a chazaka. You should have planted it. Done. No. It's not financially viable to do what? To leave the year fallow. It doesn't make sense to me because I need to put a watchman. And since all my neighbors are not around, I can hire a watchman from the entire field just for me. Mashenke, when the years where everyone's together, we split the fee, a HOA fee, and it's much cheaper. Inami, no. Mars is a little more of a starker teretz. But which is the second teretz, is basically slugging up the havamina. The havamina, we understood, if you're trying to build a chazaka, you have to keep yourself on a higher ground. The teretz of the Gemara is no. A person has a right to say, I want to, even when he's trying to build a chazaka, I want to leave it the normal mahalach, and since everyone in this district skips years, even though I'm trying to build a chazaka, I have to do it. V'avada, we're going to see that you need to have a chazaka. It's going to take you, it's going to take you 6 years to build your chazaka in such a scenario. So it's really 1, 3, 5, which is going to end up being 6 years till you get your chazaka instead of 3 years. Tanan, cheskas habatim. Started off the Mishnah on cheskas habatim says you get a chazaka in your house. Frak the Gemara, how does that work out? Va'abatim debiyama yadi, belayla lo yadi. How do you know the neighbor? How could the people give edus that he's sleeping at night? Amabaya man masid abatim. Who are the people giving edus about the houses? Shivivi, neighbors. Shivivi meidiyami biyamamu belayla. They know day and night, and we explained this also when we did the daf. That avada, they're not giving testimony that the person lived there 24 hours between the hours of 2 to 6. Even neighbors don't know that you're living there. But the basic concept, whether it's night hours or day hours, when I'm my neighbor, I'm seeing them wherever I come, he's living there. If you go on the cross testimony, you're going to see he's not between 2 to 6. That's not what the Gemara means. Belayla yadi. It's good enough day and night, all regular hours, day and night. It's good enough for chazaka. Rav Amma, no. You know what the scenario is? Kegoyin also betray. Va'amri, 2 people are showing up, which are edim. Anan agrinim inay. We were renting from him. V'darina beit lashnin biyama v'layla. So they're giving edus. They were there day and night. We have a big problem. Hani, these Eidim, noigim beidusenheim. Why? If they're not going to give testimony that this is the original Marika, that this is the person that bought it off them, they have a problem. Amrina lahuzila, we're going to tell them, havli agabesalahai. You paid rent for the past 3 years. If you're going to come out without this Eidus, you're going to have to pay rent double back to the Marikama. And that, on that Ravashi answered, Amalei, no, dailu deshvila hachi. I need. You think we're talking about foolish dayana? That's not the scenario. Mi lo yaskin and kigoin the nikiti agabesa va'amri laman liyeser. That means they have no negias because they didn't pay the owner yet. They're holding a bundle cash, 3 years rent. They say, who should we pay it to? We don't care. Either we could pay it to the Marikama, or we could pay it to a guy who's tiny to us. He was a landlord. However, he's going to bring, so by default, they're bringing Eidos that he was there for 3 years. Omar Mazutra, Rashi, the Rashbam, we went into the Rashbam, they bring down the Rashi, they bring down from the Geit Sionim, the Rashi was Nifter, Kan Meis Rashi, so now we're going to go into the Rashbam. Rashbam is much more extensive, a lot of the Kudas in the Rashbam, it's similar to Mefarshim. We're going to see even now that he asks Kashas like Rishonim sometimes. He starts throwing in Kashas, it wasn't more the Teva of Rashi. Rashi was very bekitzer. We're going to try to bring out the whatever we can from the Rashbam, but we're not going to be able to bring it out in Chazarah, every single Nakuda of the Rashbam. Rather, we're going to try to take out as much as possible. So, Rashbam says this is something separate. That what Mazutra held, that avada, a person's not chayiv to bring edus about night. The only time you have to bring edus about night, this scenario is only v'toim v'amar leisitri sadi lasudile the dard bay klashni b'yom v'layla tanasitain. Chasin the Beibar Sisin that I bought from this family Beibar Sisin, Mazvin Allah, I'm selling it to you. However, havahi ara one lamed aleph and aleph the top of the amid. Havahi ara dav mikre the Beibar Sisin. There was a land that it was called the Beibar Sisin. And what's the problem? Amalei, hi, love the Beibar Sisini. This land, this specific land, I did not buy it from the Beibar Sisin, it belongs to me. However, V'ikruya the Mikra the Beibar Sisin. That was the name, but Avada was Kach Kairlai. But he's trying to tie in that it wasn't from them. So Asin Kmei Dav Nachman, Ukma B'yad Lekech, he gave it to the Lekeach, and he said that he's able to pull it out, and he's getting that property also along with all the other properties. I'm the Meicher. I'm saying a taino that it's not Beibar Sisins. So effective Mar, Kasha the Rava, Kasha of Nachman of Nachman. You Rava earlier is telling us over there, that what? That the person is taken away from the Marikama needs to bring a raya. Here we're saying the person who's selling it gets to hold on to it. And also Rav Nachman. You Rav Nachman earlier said that the guy's trying to shchuna gavoy, the Marikama has a good chazaka. So if so, you should be able to pull it out from the Beibar Sisin. The Mar says no. The Rava like Kasha. I'm not arguing over the sugya of muchsuk of what of a meitzim mechaver all of a raya. Rav is tying to him the sugya earlier. The second you have a normal chazaka of 3 years, that second you establish yourself as a muchsuk. Now he comes and tries to tie in a shchuna gavoy. He's ready going after the chazaka was established. And therefore I'm a muchsuk, so to over here by the Beibar Sisin. Everything I own is a muchsuk. I'm the meicher. You need to bring me a right to prove otherwise. Rav Nachman Amalei Kasha, Kivin the Amalei the Beibar Sisin. He said I'm selling the Beibar Sisin. Oh, Mikra the Beibar Sisin. Allah day Rami the Galui the Labra Sisin. Right? We say if a duck is a quacks, it walks like a duck, it sings like a duck. It is a duck. Right? That's the concept. Mashenkin over here, the case of chazaka, you didn't establish a chazaka. Your chazaka is like a star. Until you're able to totally finalize every last taina that the Marikama is going to try to slug up your taina, till then you don't become a din of a muchsuk. The chazaka is not valid. Another maisa. A person tells his friend, my boys, what are you doing in my house? What do you mean? I have a chazak on this. I was overseas and therefore I wasn't able to be meiche. And the Rashbam goes through the scenarios. We're talking about whether shas chayim, not shas chayim, but the nakuda is that he wasn't able to be meiche and it was a good tainu. I have witnesses. The chol every year of asin talsa yomi. Every year you come in for 30 days. And he had another house, Rashbam says. But you were here for 30 days. You should have known better to be meiche. I only came back for 30 days. I was very busy with the shuk and I had no time to be meiche. Not that I had no time to be meiche. Rather, Rashbam says I didn't know you were living in my house because I was so focused. It's normal. It's a fair assessment. They say that 30 days since he was overseas throughout the year, Torah b'shuko. And therefore, it's not a good chazak. My boys, what are you doing in my land? I bought it from Pliny. The Bach takes out the Amarli. That he bought it from you. So he answers back, Amarli, at lav kamaydis, aren't you moide? And the Rashbam is going to throw that in as a raya by das baldin kaneidim dummy. Aren't you moide? The hayar didihi. You're moide that used to belong for me. You tell me you bought it from Ruvain. I hate to break it to you. Reuven's a scammer. I have nothing to do with Reuven. At v'at lo zavinta mi noi zil, get out of my karka. Lav bal dvorim didiat. Who are you? You have nobody over here. Therefore, I could kick you out of the karka. I feel very bad that you got scammed by this seller. He probably doesn't feel bad. You're right. But so the Rashbam brings out a few points. We're going to try to say this Rashbam more or less outside very quickly. When we learned the daf, we did it very slowly. In yeshivas, people spend weeks in this, but we're going to try to quickly scroll through it outside. The Rashbam brings out a nakuda off, and he says, At lav kamaydis. He's trying to say is that he's coming from the Haidas Baldin. You yourself, Amayda Das Baldin, Kemeid Nami. Therefore, it's good enough in a scenario where there's no chazaka. However, what happens when he has a chazaka? This case is talking about that he's trying to say is that he wasn't there for 3 years. Therefore, he needed to come on to Haidas Baldin, and it works without a chazaka. What would happen if there is a chazaka? Zok Rashbam, there's two scenarios that it would help when he has a chazaka. One is when he says, I saw Reuven buy it from you. So therefore he's nem with a migu. Zok Rashbam, he has a migu. He could have said, I bought it from you directly. Therefore he's nem with a migu. As long as he has a chazaka, he's believed. That's scenario number one. Scenario number two is when he's able to bring Adim, that Reuven, the seller, was there for 1 day. The second he was there for 1 day, the status quo changes in such a scenario that it automatically turns into the Reuven is the Marikama. That's what the Rashbam wants to bring it out. This is more or less outside. The Rashbam is much more extensive, but we're not going to be able, we don't have time to go through it right now. Okay, so what's the halacha? Amarava Dina Kamer Lane, it's taka good. Nakuda, and he was Maida, and therefore he has to give him back his karka. Another Maisa, my boys, Bahayara, what are you doing on my land? Amalei, me planis, I bought it from Yanim. Vachaltiash nechazaka, and I was there and I have a chazaka. Amalei, again. Planya gazalnuhu. He's a gazlan. Amalei, va'isli sadi, dasoi ve'imli chibach. I went and asked you for advice, and you pushed me, whether you pushed me or you gave me the approval. Va'amartali zilzav, and yes, you said, yes, it's a very good business deal, and you should go buy the karka. So he's trying to bring it as a raya that if a taka belonged to me, if a taka belonged to you, why in the world would you give me advice to buy your own karka? Amalei, I was a little cunning. I taka tricked you. I'm not such a nice guy. And rather, the first person you're buying from, he's a mafiosi, or he has a lot of money. He has a whole legal team against me. You're very weak. So I tricked you. That's really what he did into buying the karka. And now that it's your karka, I'm able to come to you with my lawyers. I'm much more powerful than you. What is the halacha? Amravadina kamerle. Taka, he has a right, and even though it doesn't sound nice, but that's the halacha. Frekta Gemara, keman, ka'adman. This comes out like adman, and it's a problem. The Rashbam says, vanan, kaimal karabanon. So this is the kasha. Says over there to Tanan, ha'oyer ala sadeh v'chasim ala be'it. What is the halacha if a person comes and says that this Sad of Reuven belonged to me? The problem is the Shtar Mechira has his own signatures as a witness. So Adman Oimer, the same type of concept. Hasheni Noichli, Harishan Kasher Menu. Yes, do you know why I did that? Because you're much easier to deal with. No, Ibn is chusa. By you writing it, you lost your chus, and therefore, by you signing on the Shtar, it's a raya that it doesn't belong to you. So why is it a kasha? Again, the Rashbam says that can be like Adman, because we all like Rabbanan. My answer is no, afilu teim Rabbanan. It's not a raya. It's not a kasha. Because we could hold like Rabbanan. Afilu teim Rabbanan. Hasam avele maisa. Rabbanan hold when you're willing to do a maisa and sign on a shtar, that's an issue. Hacha, tibura, oven, and inish to mikri v'am. It's normal sometimes to talk. You come to me for advice. I wasn't expecting you to pull it to me after shul, after shachris. I quickly throw you advice. Yes, it wasn't the nicest. I should have told you that I'm going to go in litigation with the person, but I stayed quiet and it worked. Next Maisa. My boys, what are you doing in this land? Again, very similar Maisa. I have witnesses. The Asis Ba'urta, I came to you at night. And you told me Taka to go buy it. And you offered to buy it from me, correct? What happened was, you came over to me the night prior and you said, can I buy the karka? And I said, no chance, I'm not selling. And the next thing I know, I get a thing from Bezdin that it's your karka. Amalei, Amina, Izmindino. Yes, I thought to myself, you know what? It's not worth the headache. I'd rather buy it from you than go deal with machlaikis and go fight it off. But now that you're not giving me an option, I have no choice but to fight it. Amarava, Inachanami, it's normal that Avin, Inish, the Zavin Dine, that he buys it off instead of going into litigation. Another Maisa. Ahu Damle Chavre, my boys Bahayara, what are you doing in this land? Amalei me plan is Avina Vachadishne Chazaka, Neva Chazaka, Amalei, oh, Nakitna Shtara, Dizavni Li, Mine, Arbishni. He pulls out a star that he bought it from the Marikama 4 years ago. And you're tiny, you've only bought it 3 years ago. So to give a little more context is as follows. A person walks over to Reuven and says, what are you doing in this land? He says, I have a chazaka. Stam chazaka. He said, I have a chazaka 3 years. Now, kula amaydu, there's no such halacha of toyin chayzer v'toyin. You're not allowed to reverse of what you said. So if you dafka said 3 years, and you meant the 3 years and not more, there's no shaila, you can't go back. The shaila becomes, what happened over here? When you approach me and you ask me, what are you doing in this field? And I say, I have a chazaka 3 years. Am I just saying the word 3 years to tell you that I have a chazaka? But if you would ask me directly, very specifically, what was the date you bought the karka, you would have told me more than 3 years. So that's really the shaila. So what happened was, he pulls out a star. The second I said 3 years, he thought he got me. So he pulls out a star that I bought it 4 years ago. Amalei answers it back, no. Me savish nechazaka tlas. I didn't mean 3 years specifically. Shnei kamina, shnei tlas, shnei kamina. Shnei chazaka tuva kamina. I meant avada much more than 3 years. I had it already for 7 years. The reason why I said the word 3 is only to show you that I have a chazaka. But the second you pull out a star of 4 years, avada, I'm explaining myself that I meant more than that. So the shaila is Gemara. Is that a normal thing to talk? And if it's normal, he's not really doing a toyin chayzer v'toyin. Amirava avida the enchi the kar l'shnei tuva shnei chazaka v'hani mili zok the Gemara. Vada we're talking about achala shnei v'shnei the kadim chazaka the high l'shtar the hach. We're talking about it was enough years. It was 7 years that it was enough years before the chazaka. Therefore, he has 3 years before the guy who had his 4 years. Then Mele doesn't need it. However, he brings down for the Rashbam, does he need dafka 7 years? He brings down for Rabbeinu Chananel, then he needs it for 7 years, or maybe 3 years is enough. Ayin sham. Aval shis. If he's only able to prove it that he got it 6 years ago, since the person's proving it with the shtar that he had it 4 years later, the person never had a chazaka. So ein lecha machag doyle mazu, because he was able to sell it to him after 2 years. Ze oime shel avoisai v'achatiyah shnei chazaka v'ze oime shel avoisai. Ze oime shel avoisai ha'esisaidi. Right. A person coming in Taina that it belonged to my father and I have a chazaka. V'zeh shel avoisai. Hi, ha'esisaidi davasei. One person brings a chazaka that belonged to his father. The ha'esisaidi da'achlo shnei chazaka. So what happens over here? Is he able to come with the migu or not? Over here he could come with the migu since he has a chazak and said, I bought it from you. But the problem is, he tied it belonged to my forefathers. And the issue becomes is that you produce eidim that belong to your forefathers. So they're both bringing tainas that always belonged to us. It was a family of ours.
One says yes, one says yeah, it belongs to the forefather.
No, they both say it belongs to the father. They both say Zeh Mishal Avaisai. But one brings able to aid in the proof that it belonged to his forefathers, and the other one is able to prove a chazaka. The problem is, his taina is not that I bought it from you, his taina is that it belonged to my forefathers, but he had a migu that he could have easily said, I bought it from you, and he would have been believed. So Amarav Amal Shakar, I bought it from you, and therefore I'm believed. Amalabai, no. Mali Shakar Mamakim Edim Lo Yamrinon. Your taina of migu is what? Against Eidim that's saying that it's avaisai. You're saying your whole taina is that what? That it belonged to your forefathers. But there's Eidim going against you. So it's a migu makam Eidim loy amrina.
To whom are we giving it now? To the guy who said that he brought out that he has chazaka, or to the guy who...
So again, what we're going to do is we're going to see the Rashbam, we're going to see if it's called Mgavar, you're taking it away. We're going to see in a minute.
Later.
Right, but over here what we're doing is we're taking it away from him because you don't have a migu.
From which one? From the guy who has item that he has...
The guy who has Eidim that it's avaisai, he's going to get the field back. I have Eidim that it belongs to my forefathers. Right. You have Eidim, you have a chazaka. What's your taina? That it belongs to your forefathers. Your taina is not minach zavinte. Therefore, we take it away from you because you don't have a taina. It's like kol chazaka she'enim a taina. Because your taina of avasai is going against Eidim. So what is the Allah chazaka she'enim a taina? Do we take it away from you?
Yeah, we take it away. You don't have,
So that's exactly what's happening. That's exactly what's happening over here.
The guy who says
So it's going back to me. I have proof that it belonged to my forefathers. So I'm the Marikama. So it goes back to me. Correct. We're going to see later the Rashbam Taisis if correct. If yes, called on Gvar or not. Yeah. Okay. Hadar, Hadar in Avasachi. Here he says, you're right, it was Taka your forefathers. So why didn't you tell me this? That it belonged to my forefathers. The reason why I use the sprach that it belongs to my forefathers, the Samach li alak davasi. It was so stark to me that I held like that. But Avad, if you would have asked me to clarify, I would have told you that Avad, I bought it from your forefathers. So the shaila is again tayin v'chayzer v'tayin, ein v'chayzer v'tayin v'chayzer v'tayin. So again to clarify, there's no real shaila of tayin, chayzer v'tayin really. The question is he in such a scenario just tying up his words or not? So ula amar tayin v'chayzer v'tayin, adayin amar ein tayin v'chayzer v'tayin. Umay de ula hecha da amalei shalavaisai ve'loi shalavisach. He explicitly said it doesn't belong to his forefathers. The ein tayin chayzer v'tayin. Again, like we said, there's no machlokes of a sugi of ein tayin v'chayzer v'tayin. That everyone holds you can't change your taina. The shaila is this considered changing a taina or not? The hecha da have koi beidina ve'loi tan. What is the halacha? He wasn't in bezin. Va'asam evroi v'tan ein chayzer v'tayin. What happens in bezin? You said X, Y, Z. You went back to Shul, you would disappear for a week, you went to the Kiddush, and all your friends started giving you wonderful ideas. So you come back to Bezin with a different taina, Zakdamar Eina Tayin V'chayzer. Why? My taima, Tanase Agmere. All they did was to teach you what to tell him. Your friends gave you wonderful advice, exactly what to tell them Bezin. The other way around. We clearly says he bought it from Vayse the Chayzer V'tayin. What happens? Till court started, he wasn't opening his mouth too much. However, once v'loitan, v'asle beidina v'tan, only in Bezin suddenly started tining. The halacha is the chayzer v'tayin. A person could do that. My time of it inish the loy megali tanasei. Maybe in the Geisha courts today, I think you have to bring out all your evidence before. But avada with Bezdin, you don't have to open your mouth of all your tainas until you show up. Like that, he can't prepare himself to refute it. I am really from the Nardoim. It's really the Tayin Chayzer V'Tayin, V'Hilchasa, L'Maisa, the Tayin, like Ula, the Tayin Chayzer V'Tayin. Weiter, Zeh Meshel Avaisai, V'Chaltia Shnei Chazaka. V'Zeh Meshel Avaisai, V'Chaltia Shnei Chazaka. So each one's tiny. We're going with the Bach, that he's Taka, it was his father's, and he had a Chazaka. Ha, Isisaidi, the Avasai, so what happens? We have a steer on the Eidos. There's no question about it. That one of these peers, one of these sets of Eidim are lying. Because one time it was his father's and he has a chazaka, one time he has Eidim and he has a chazaka. Amar of Nachman, Uki achilo labahadi achilo. Vuki ara becheskes havasa. It's not a problem. What we do is, we take the Eidos habachasha of achilo, we erase that Eidos, and we're left with the Eidos that he's given a wonderful Eidos that belong to the father. Amalei Rabba, how can you do this? Va'Eidos mucheshesi. There's two kitas, there's two sets of Eidim. They're arguing with each other. One of them is for sure pasul. So how can you take any part of the Eidos? Amalei nihidis chachish b'achilasa. You're right regarding the achila. Again, lamed aleph from Beis now bavasa mi is chachish. Regarding the Eidos of shalavasa, exakt Rashi kayimu v'akol maidim by. Therefore, it's not a problem. So we want to say, Lema Rava Rav Nachum in Palukta, the Rav Huna Rav Chizda Kamiflaki. Maybe this is really a machlokes. Why the Itmar, Beis Kita Eidim HaMechisha Zuzu. What happens? Two people are clearly saying that Reuven borrowed money from Shimon. Now we're not talking about Eidei Hazama. Eidei Hazama, the Torah tells us that you're believed the second pair. What is Eidei Hazama? Himanu Ayisam. However, what happens, he's not saying that the witnesses were with us. Rather, what he's tying, it can't be that Reuven borrowed money from Shimon because Shimon was with us. So that, Zok Torah, who should we believe? Now, there's no one Aiden to be believed more than the other. And therefore, what is the halacha? Beis Eidim Mechishas and Mechishas Zu Amar Vuna. Zu Ba b'fnei atzmi ida, v'Zu Ba b'fnei atzmi ida. Means to say is, we're not going to, each one has a chazaka kashrus. So what happened was in week one, we had two sets of Eidim, and out of the two sets, out of all these four people, two of them are liars. What is the halacha? Next week, could you use them as Eidim? Each of the sets. So the halacha is as long as they're individual sets, they have a chesed kashrus. Avada, if you're going to use Reuven from set A and Levi from set B together, then there's no chesed kashrus, because in the bucket there's a liar in there. There's someone who's possible, therefore it's not going to work. However, to use the two Eidim separately, the halacha is it's not a problem of Eidis psulav. Chizdama no, bahadi saku shakri lamali. We look at them as regular Eidei shakranim. So Lamer of Nachman the Amar Karav Huna and Rava Karav Chizda. So that Gemara says no. Leave them Chizda kula amalei pliga. According to Chizda, no one's really going to argue. It's not a problem. We're not going to take it away from Suffolk to say the psulim. Ki pliga leader of Huna. Now what's the shaila according to Rav Huna? You Rav Huna said Zubav ne'em atzmi mida. Rav Nachman, Rav Huna. Taka like Rav Huna, that there's no problem. A week later, each one could go on and give Eidus their kosher. Rava would tell you, Ad kan like Rav Huna le'Eidus acheres. You're right. Rav Huna is going to hold when he comes in week 2 to give a separate Eidus. Aval Oisa Eidus lie. Rav Huna's not going to argue. Rav Huna's not going to argue in a scenario, this case where it's the exact same Eidus to split up the Eidus of Achila and the Eidus of Avaisai. There Rav Huna says Avadis, they're both coming to Bezdin, they're both giving one testimony, and a chelik of that testimony is for sure puzzle. It's a chasha. We knock out the whole entire Eidus. Now what happened was, this is where it's going to start getting sticky. We're going to go until Lamed Beis and Aleph, the end of Amud, the sugya of Zelusa de Beidina. What happened was over here, Hadar Aisi Sadi Davase. Ended up leaving the karka, right? Because he only was able to bring Eidus that are chazak, but he had no Eidus Avaisai. Son, he's able to bring an Eidus that it's Avaisai. So Amr Rav Nachman, Ana Nachtinein, Ana Maskinein. Zelus de Beidina Lechashina. We're the one who took it away from him. We'll give it right back. Zelus de Beidina. We're not chayshish for this. Meisiv Ravavi Tamer Rav Zera Shnayim. It's a Gemara in Ksubas Chaf Alva and Bezos says Shnayim Aimer Meis. 2 people said the husband died. Vishnayim Aimer Loi Meis. And 2 other people said he didn't die. So you have two sets of Eidim. Or Shnayim Aimer Niskarsha. Very similar. Vishnayim Aimer Loi Niskarsha. The halacha is Hayrezu Loitinase. The Ish is not allowed to get remarried because you have a tray. And she's a cheskes eshish. Vem nises, however, if she gets married, loy teitse. And again, the Gemara talks to the Gemara, and Ksubis explains hakadagmi. The Gemara says she's a bari. It's a very big chiddush, and Rashi over there says he's a bari because I know my husband so well. That turns it into a bari that he would have came back. And the scenario is that she's a bari and she married one of the Eidim. That's what the Gemara in Ksubis says. That's the only scenario where it's loy teitse. However, Rabbi Nachman Rabbi Yaisi Aimer teitse. She has to get divorced. Because she has a cheskes eshish. Amar Menachem Yaisi Amos Animat Tate it's man shebo Eidim. That's only when there was a tray. Va'achakach nisses, you didn't listen. Aval nisses, what happens if you got married after the first set of Eidim came and said that the husband died? Va'achach bo Eidim arezu like Tate. So we're medaik over there. Rashbam explains the reason why she's not going to go out. Why? Because of Zelusa de Beidina. So very clearly you see Zelusa de Beidina from the Ksugya and Ksubos. It's a kasha on Rev Nachman. I Taka was going to replace him back with the original person that was in the field. Now that you brought me Taka Kasha from Ksubis, not only that, I'm Taka going to do Michaishas Lelus Beidina. A few weeks later, whatever extensive period of time passed, Nafak Avad Uvda. He Taka went back and gave back his karka. So again, there's Machlekes, Rashbam, and Taisvus. Is the scenario that he kicked him out, or we say Kol Dal and Gvar, which we're going to see that in the Sugya later on, Kol and Gvar. Taisvus says we're talking about that we gave it back to the person we kicked it out. But the point is, he ended up giving it back. So man de Chaza, anyone who's watching Rav Nachman would understand, Sabatu Sibiyati, he's making a mistake. He forgot about the Kasha and Ksubis. Veloihi, it's not really why. Elam Mishom, Detalya, Ba'ashli, Ravivi. He had strong ropes to rely upon. Who is that, Dr. Rashbam? It's Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Lezer, Rabbi Shimon, Ben Gamliel. They all hold that what? We're not chayshish, lezelusa de Beidina. And we're going to see this from the Sugya Lamed Beis and Alpha, the Maskana of Rashi. So let's go into this. The Maskana of Rab Ashi, not Rashi. Rav Ashi. We're going to see Rav Ashi. The Maskana of Rav Ashi is going to be that we're going to say the Ashli Ravi is going to hold that. Let's see it inside. The Tanan. Rabbi Yehuda Aimer, Mailin the Kuna Pi Eidechot. The person cannot be, we're going to see what we're talking about specifics, but if a person Eidechot comes, we're not going to give him back. We're not going to say he's a kohen to get schusim, whether Beis Hamikdash, to get trumas, to get aliyah first, to do berachas kahanim, etc. Amar Rabbi Lazar, when do we say this? Emasai b'malkim sheish ayrin. That's when there's people tinying that he's not a kohen. We'll see what he is. Why he's not a kohen. However, if there's no people, we're going to see that means trade. There's no Eidim. Tining is not a kohen. Mayin l'kuna pi dechot. Zok Shimon Gamliel, Aimim Meshum Rav Shimon Eskan. Mayin l'kuna pi dechot. So for the Gemara right away, Rav Shimon Gamliel and Scheiner Rav Elazar, they're both saying the exact same thing. The Mayin l'kuna pi dechot. V'chi tema zok Gemara. You're going to tell me the nafkamina between Rav Shimon Gamliel is as follows. Irachad ika benayu. We're talking about where there's 1-8. 1-8 comes to passel you up, and he says that you're not a kohen. And comes another 8 to say you are a kohen. The what? Rabbi Lezer savar irachad, that it's a good error, and therefore 8 echad is not going to be enough to make him back a kohen. Reb Shimon Gamliel Sava, Iratrei. You need to have 2 Eidim to knock me out. However, in a case where one aid says you're not a Kayin, it's good enough, another aid to say that he is a good Kayin. Well, Lamed Beis Amid Aleph. For Ektamar, that can be, V'amar Rabbi Yochanan, Divrei HaKol Ein Ir Pachas V'Shnayim. Rabbi Yochanan says, the Rashbam does say, that lo yisparish heicha. We're not 100% sure if Rabbi Yehuda was talking about this specific context. Tosfos says we are, but the point is we're going to pull out Rabbi Yehuda for our sugya that there's no such thing as error under 2 Eidim. So if so, you're back to square one. So Gemara says, the case is as follows. There's a regular chazaka that his father's a kohen. Very crucial words. It's a kol. All it is a kol. That ben gerusho ben chalutzahu. That his father married, he's a son of a gerusha, a son of a chalutza. The Gemara clearly says that someone who's a son of a gerusha and a chalutza loses the schus of kahuna. So vachtine, because of that, we paused it. Very crucial words. We paused the kol. We had to stop. We said till we clarify what's happening, you cannot get aliyah first. Va'asei dacha comes eid v'amar dekayinu. Comes one aid and says, I know for a fact it was a fake rumor. I know she was never divorced. She was never even married, and it's a great kahuna. Vaskine, we put him back. Now, v'asu beitrei comes to eidim v'amride ben gerusha v'chalutzahu. So now we're stuck. We have clearly 2 eidim. So what do? Vachtine, we remove them from kahuna. Now, v'aseid echad v'amar dekainu. So we have 1 8. Again, we had a kol. 1 8. Says he's a kain, we put him back. We have 2 Eidim, says that's we have to remove him, then we have another Eid. Everyone holds that we could take Eid Echad from earlier, before the 2 Eidim, and the Eid Echad today, and make it into a trey v'trey. Since it's a trey v'trey, it should be a good chazakah, so why don't we? So lucid beidina. Now the Rashbam does ask a very good question. The l'chayra, you had a kol. So if it's a trey v'trey, you should go back to square one, and if you're square one, there's a call saying he's not a chesed kahuna. So Rashbam gives a chiddush. No, there's a call. You never got to wait for the call. What happened was there was a call that came out. So frekta Rashbam v'ikasha trey v'trey ninu v'hav is suffix because of the call. That's what the Rashbam means, and that the Rashbam answers it's a trey v'trey, but the aid rishon is still enough. That what happened was there was a kol, came the Eid Echad. The Eid Echad took away that kol. Now there's a tray, and comes the Eid Echad. We're going to have a tray with tray, and we're going to still stick to square one. That the Eid Echad has somewhat of a kayach to knock away a kol. That's the chiddush or Rashbam. When we were doing the Daf Yomi yesterday, we had this kasha of a tray with tray, and I think this is what the Rashbam is answering. That it helps tray with tray, and it's going to knock away, you're back to square one, you have a chazakah because the Eidecha knocks away the kol. Okay, so why don't you? Zaktik Marla is the elusive the Beidino. The only reason why don't we put him back as kahuna is the elusive the Beidino. Reb Shimon Gamliel Savar, Anan Achtine the Amar Meskinale, the elusive the Beidino, like Hashinon. That's the whole Nakuda, right? I skipped a little. Because Chashin is Luz Beidino. Rishim Gamliel Savar, Anan Achtine V'Anan Maskinale is the Luz Beidino like Chashin. So l'chayr it's a raya to the Luz Beidino. So far we don't see the Ashi Ravi, and this is Rav Ashi. Maskif la Rav Ashi Hachi. If you're telling me that everyone holds the Eidus Mitzvah Revis, that's the Machlaikis. Ma'ir Yechad Afilu Betrei Nami. Why does it have to be a very interesting case? Eid Echad, Trey Eidim, and Eid Echad. What would happen Trey V'Trey? If the whole Nakuda is elusive Medina, it doesn't make a difference if it's Eid Echad mitzdarfen or not. Even in a scenario we had Eid Echad, or even a case you had 2 Eidim saying you're not a kohen. So what do? We removed you from Yakuna. We have come another 2 Eidim and say you are a kohen. What's the difference if it's Eid Echad or Trey? Even a Trey with Trey, we're not going to remove, we're not going to put him back because of the Lusa de Beidino. El Amar Vashi, the Kula Amar Loi Chashinon. So this is the Ashli Ravi. According to Rav Ashi, everyone holds we're not chayshish this. V'hacha b'letzaref eidus kamiflagi. We're handling the machlekes if you could be mitzaref eidus. Upa looked at the Hani Tanoi, the Tanya. Now this ratio that we're about to say, there's 2 machlekes in the Brisa. The first ratio, the Brisa Zakter Rashbam, has nothing to do with our sugya, but we're mentioning it for the seifa. La'aylam ein edus mitzarefes achir shnei ka'echad. Which means to say is, according to Tanakama, the first part of the Brisa, there's no such thing as being mitzdarf in 8. The Rashbam says the scenario is, for example, someone says, 2 Eidim says I saw Reuven borrow money. Another 2 Eidim says I don't know if I didn't see him borrow, but I heard the Aidah. So you have Aidah, and you have seen the Eidos that's mitzdarf. That's Tanakama that it's not mitzvah. Rishon Koicha says no. Even if the Eid Echad comes and says on Sunday Reuven borrowed money, and comes another pair of Eidim says Shimon borrowed money, it is mitzvah. But this is not the sugya. The sugya is the seifa. Zok Rashbam. That what? According to Tanakama, until they both show up at the exact same time in Bezdin, it's not mitzvah. When his friend comes tomorrow, it's not a problem, it's going to be mitzvah. It's mamish, what we see in the sugya. Came Eid Echad on 1 week, and then later on came another Eid, so we see it's a machlokes, tanoim, if it's Eidusim, it's tarefis or not. Let's continue a little more. My boys by Aro. So we're going to go to Lamed Beis, and I bought it from you, Shtara, and I have a star. Amalei, the Marikama tells him, Shtar Zayafuhu. It's a bad star. And therefore you don't have a chazaka, and it's a shtar mezuyif. So Gachin, the Baal Shtar, whispered, and Lachish Rava, in order that the Ma'ara shouldn't hear him, and he was made this, says, yes, Shtara Zayafu, you're right, it's a false star. Miu Shtar Ma'al Yahav, leave it erchas. V'amina in Katai Biyad Koldu. And I told myself, at least let me come with something. So let's clarify. The Rashbam does give 3 scenarios. What's it mean a shtar mezuyif? He brings down from Rabbeinu Chanano that Avada it's not a shtar mezuyif, rather it's a shtar amana. That usually a shtar amana is for a future date, but he used it over there. He brings another 2 mahalchim, whether the Eidim are liars or the shtar is so mezuyif that the Eidim think they signed in it. However, he likes to stick with Rabbeinu Chanano's pshat, and we do think that it makes the most sense to say that pshat, because otherwise what comes out is that he's a shakran. How do you understand if a person is a shakran to say migu? Even with Kaychatayna, all the Rishonim question this. So let's try to work. We learned yesterday that this is why the Rashbam says a Rishon Iker, that it's a shtar amana, because like that it doesn't turn the person into a shakran. And it makes more sense that we can understand the migu. So Amar Rava, Ma'ale Shaki, Boy Amale Shtar Ma'alyu, he could have lied and he has a migu in his nema. Amale Rav Yosef, what are you relying on? A high shtara, that star, high star, chaspa ba'amu. Your whole foundation, Lashon Rashi is kol koichoi v'cheskose bekarka zedei star, and that whole entire star is not anything. It's a chaspa ba'amu. It's a piece of paper. And they were trying to do question. So what? Migu should still work mitam koichatayna. So we saw yesterday. Taisa brings from the Yivam the loy amrinu migu lahaitzi moments like that. We can understand it a little easier. Rav Yosef. Okay, another Maisa, very similar. This was Karka, now we're going to see a Maisa with money. Who the Yomi? The Masikno Bach that I paid it for you. Vashtar, and I have a star. Amalei, star Zayafuhu, it's a star Mezuyef. Gachin, again, he whispered, Lachish Rava in, yes, star Zayafu, Mishtar Ma'ayavali. I had a good star Ve'echas, and I lost him. And I told myself, in Kadai Biyad, the Kaldu, at least let me come with something. Again, similar halachas.
Something like facsimile today.
What do you say?
That it's a copy of the star.
You have a CC.
You
So
done it on your computer, or you made a copy.
a CC, a carbon copy, it's called, correct.
Yeah.
Someone comes with a carbon copy that's probably a very good star. It would have the same halach as a star, I would think. You know, when they write tickets, you have a thing underneath. It's called CC, a carbon copy. That's what it means. Okay. In email, we say CC me. Amar.
Should be between a carbon copy, like literally figuratively a carbon copy, and a printed out copy.
Carbon copy is a copy. That's what the word carbon copy means.
I think it was referring to something with the email.
Email's not going to work.
It's not yet.
It's chas b'ba'almu. That's what Rabbi Yosef's tain is. It's chas b'ba'almu. Whether the chas b'ba'almu means a shtar amana, whether it's a shtar mezuyif, or the Eidim are liars, the point is Rabbi Yosef's tain is you're not really coming with anything. That's Rabbi Yosef's tain. You have no. What are you really coming with? You're coming with an email, a printout email that you fooled us. It's nothing. It's not your star. So where are you coming from to have a taina? On that, the question the Rishonim still ask, it's still migu. Migu shouldn't make a difference. What's the difference how I work with migu? So you could say the other 2 pshatim in Rashi, it's shver. If a guy's a liar, migu shouldn't be a fact. Migu is, what's migu mean? Believe me, you're a liar. Your whole thing is sheker. So that's why we wanted to say Rishon Iker. That's what we learned yesterday when we did the daf. We said that's maybe why Rashbam says the Rabbeinu Chananel pshat of shtar mana is the best. Because like shtar mana is not a lie. He's not a shakran. He's pulling out a good shtar and he's saying, believe me, because I could have said taina a. That's what we wanted to learn yesterday. Okay. A CC maybe would work. Okay. So what happened was this was a scenario of money. So the exact same thing happened. He said, and I figured, let me come with something. I could have said it's good star. Again, what are you relying on? So this is where it gets. Where? Ba'aro. The Hilchas Kadav Yosef Bezuzi. And he explains. Hilchas Karavo Ba'ara the Hechad Kaimo. Ara Tekum. Since it's land, we leave it where it is. And the Rashbam and Tais both explain the Shaila is in halacha. Zok Taisis, the Mesafke like Kaman Hilchas, so we're not sure who the halacha is like. It's not that we don't know Taka the Pshat. Therefore, he wants to say the halacha is going to be like Rava by Karka, and he's going to leave it. And in a Chanami, Migu is going to work. The Hechad Kaima Ara Tekum, the Hilchas Kadav Yosef Bezuzi. The Hechad Kaima Bezuzi, look me, we leave the money where it is, and I might some Chaveroi, all of Araya. Let's fair ice with one last case. Ahu Arva, there was this Arav, Damalei Laloiva, Havale Mezuzi, the Parati, Lamalvi Loch. I paid up the scenario, Rashbam brings two cases, either Arav Kaplan, or a case where he made up agreement that he's able to go directly to him to ask him for money first. And he says, please pay me back the $100 that I paid the Loiva. The Malva, sorry. Vashtar, and he pulled out the star. Amalei La Particha, didn't I pay you back? Well, what's going on? I paid you back yesterday. Amalei lav hadro shaklisinu minoi, which means to say is, you're right, you paid me back $100, but immediately you said, can I make a new loan? Another 90-day loan. And he took back the loan. Instead of writing new star, they used the old star. So shalcha vidi b'rav l'kmei d'abaya, ki ha'gavna mai, what is the halacha? Shalcha abaya, mai tivoyle. What's your shaylo? Oh, here the hama hilchas k'da rava ba'aro, the hilchas k'da Yosef bezuzi. The hechad okmi zuzi, look me, da mitzim chaver l'raya. He's mighty, he paid back. Right? And in this whole star, the Rashbam explains, becomes worthless. Because the second you paid up with that money, that star turns into a regular piece of paper. And the Gemara fears ice, Vahani mili da'amalei hadras oisvinu minoi. Aval amalei adrina nahalech machmas dahava shayafi v'sumki, which means to say is that's talking about where he turned it for Nair Alva. A brand new Alva makes the star chas ba'amu. However, if he didn't accept the method of payment, by saying, because it was worn out coins, Zak Rashbam, Shaifi, Vesumki, it was getting rusty, it was getting red. Akati Isilu Shibuda, the star avada, the payment that when you do a refund, the star is considered a regular good star, and therefore, halacha wise, he's able to bring, Taka used that star, we're going to say that he's able to ask for money. Again, in Yetzer Hashem, next week Sunday, we're going to pick up from Lamed Beis, Amud Beis.